Welcome to the Going Green podcast. Today we're going to look at the salad shortage, or in the words of Teresa Coffey, let them eat turnips. Yeah, okay. So the UK and other countries are facing the great salad shortage in the winter. Now, let's ask a very simple question. Where does all this salad stuff come from? And the answer in the UK is we grow quite a bit of our own, and we import the rest from countries like Spain and Morocco.
Now, alongside that, where do you think, say, somewhere like Brussels gets its tomatoes from? It also gets it from Spain and Morocco.
Yeah, and Italy with their famous tomato sauce for their pizza. They get their lovely tomatoes from
Spain and Morocco.
Yeah.
Because it's almost as if not Spain and Morocco has specialised in tomatoes, but they found that, well, they grow quite well because, of course, tomatoes generally need quite a lot of sunshine, uh, and sort of quite a lot of warmth, which is obviously very good in Spain and Morocco, and then a lot of water, because that's how you get a nice juicy tomato. If you haven't got a juicy tomato, then you've got a very non-squelchy one.
So basically, there are some extreme weather problems like flooding and cold temperatures in Morocco, and that provides about a quarter of Britain's tomatoes. Southern
Or-
Spain,
Or not of the case.
well, yeah. Southern Spain have delayed ripening, and basically, this is what's largely causing our bare shelves in the aisles this week, and that's going to go on for the next few weeks.
Yes, so it's one of those things where, yeah, people keep blaming, it's the great Brexit of the UK not being able to import. And the answer is there's a tiny hint of that, but it's not really, because, of course, other places in Europe are also having the same amount of problem. And so it's deemed that it is a lot of prices. Now, the next thing, of course, is, as we were talking, Spain and Morocco have had not low temperatures, but low winter temperatures.
Yeah.
And so usually to grow the tomatoes, they put them in greenhouses. And that's fair, and that's wonderful. Unfortunately, they've been placing in these greenhouses, they have to heat the greenhouses up, which of course requires gas or electricity to heat up. And unfortunately, with the war in Ukraine, gas prices have been rising, so the price to heat a place is astronomical.
And that's why a lot of the UK market haven't even bothered to basically even sort of sow the seeds, because with the rising costs of heating, it's just not going to be worth it. A farmer in the UK could sow his seeds, could heat all his tomatoes to get them to grow really nicely, and then he goes to the market to sell them, and the markets are largely controlled by the supermarkets, and they say, right, now we're only going to pay this much for it. Yeah, but the farmer says, but it costs me much more to make them. They said, well, tough. And so the farmer has been through this the last few years, and they're just saying, well, yeah, I haven't got any reserves yet. Why should I subsidize the supermarket? So I won't grow that. I'll grow something else.
I mean, and so suddenly you're now seeing the problem of they're now choosing to do something else, or choosing to grow something else, which might be more profitable, and leads to the influx of problems of, now are we only the areas where we grow tomatoes, or we have to import them? We only rely on those areas. So it's one of those unfortunate issues of not seeing things grown locally, because you always hear about sort of, you need to buy local, but you also need to grow local. And unfortunately, that's not happening. Now, there was a minor point about all this was, of course, in the UK, we've had the government set a gas price cap as opposed to the industry regulator. But one of the industries that was blocked from this gas price, as in the government setting a different price, so they had to pay the extra fee, of course, was agriculture and horticultural. Uh, Whether or not that was done for the reasons of um, too much money or just for the people for heating and not needing farmers to do it, we won't go that far. So the economics environment wasn't right here in the UK to grow things in greenhouses. Here in a lovely Hertfordshire, a place called Lee Valley, which is basically known as the UK's cucumber capital. Why and how and
You,
why it's got its
you,
name is
you don't know, yeah?
don't know, don't want to know, but apparently it is. They said there was hardly a cucumber sown for the winter, and they said they can't. As I said, it's one of those things where unintended bad pricing. It was the lack of, I say government funding, but it was lack of uh, green subsidies or green price gas emission, those sort of things, as well as basically a market that just didn't want cucumbers.
Yeah,
And
and the farmers do suffer terribly here. They suffer because of Brexit, that we've come out of the um, common market and the agricultural policy, and lots of sort of subsidies given to farmers, and now they've been taken away. And the UK government said, "Yeah, we're going to do something about it." I think farmers are still waiting to find out what they're going to do. And in the meantime, the farmers in the UK are struggling. And because they're struggling so much, they just say, well, look, I'm not going to make a loss on this. Why just throw good money after bad? I just won't bother to grow anything in my greenhouses. I can grow them in the summer and I don't need to do the heating, and that'll be great. And we're going to look for sort of other crops coming along uh, later, and our salad shortage will go away, because then salad will be in season. But until then, well, we're just going to have to get on with it, because people wouldn't listen. The government haven't listened to the farmers.
supermarkets haven't listened to the farmers. It's as I
Yeah,
said, yeah, we've stated this before. It is the basically there is no common policy or even help for people, and basically, unfortunately, it is the supermarkets, the governments dictating prices, and not actually listen to the people. Who
yeah.
would be surprised? But this whole crisis, of tomatoes in affecting cucumbers is all sorts of affecting all sorts of other salad-based things. Sort of, you got your lettuces and all sorts of those sorts of things.
Well,
And
it's lettuce, it's tomatoes, it's peppers, all these sort of things that are grown under glass and are basically heated, so that they can be provided all the year round, rather than just in the summer when they're in season. We largely see, when plants are in season in supermarkets, the same price as they are when they're not. And the supermarkets control the prices. And of course, now they're feeling the pinch, and they should do something about it, but they just look after generally the bottom line, which is profit. And they say, oh, we've got no salad stuff. Well, it doesn't matter. We just won't sell it.
yeah, well, it's one of those odd things where actually you'll find several UK supermarkets have put a limit on their selling of these salad things, whereas other supermarkets haven't. And you go, okay, what's the difference? And the reason is the bigger supermarkets, if I say bigger, the more not well
The
established,
larger
the
chains.
larger chains, they've bought up all the wholesale stock of tomatoes. So they've got plenty of tomatoes to sell. And so the little ones, unfortunately, cannot compete in the price that way. So, yeah, there's a whole issue and problem that way. I know sort of one of the major things is that Normandy keeps posting messages or saying, "We've got tomatoes in our store. Look at all the fruit and veg in our stores." And basically selling out, saying, "Look at us, we've got loads." Because of course they got lots of wholesale markets in Normandy, because obviously that's where one of the major trade ports are for across the UK. And so basically, the local shops usually get a fresh um, choice, and so they were able to buy up all the things before other places could get them, and so they were on stock. Well, fair enough. Unfortunately, that means there isn't much to share and go around. It's one of those things where welcome to a bit naughty and sort of trying to buy up when you could be selling to. They need to have all their shelves full. The answer as well.
But look, there isn't just a shortage of tomatoes in the UK. There is a worldwide tomato shortage. And this is affecting things like tomato ketchup.
Oh yeah,
And my son's going to cry, not this one, but the other one, because he has food with his tomato ketchup.
well, yes. But yeah, it is one of those things where you've got to look at if we're talking about, say, fresh tomatoes. This is people like their fresh tomatoes and going through having them. Of course, you've got to remember other products are made from tomatoes themselves, and we're talking, like, say, the tomato ketchup. We're talking about uh, um, I was thinking the pizza sauce, but it's not tomato ketchup, but it's pizza sauce. It's like tomato
It's
ketchup.
still tomato based,
It's
isn't it?
tomato based. We'll go with it. Anyway, and so you take half of your, uh, I say tomatoes, whatever, right? And they go to fresh, and then your other half go to be processed, to be turned into things sort of like tomato sauces and all sorts of those sorts of things. I know chili chutney is quite a big one. They say is going to be hampered because of the course they use tomato sauce based to make their chutneys.
And the chilies themselves are basically similar to peppers, so they're also the same sort of type of crop, and they need heating basically to about 20 Celsius to get them to grow nicely. And of course, it costs an awful lot of money to do that. So why else have we got problems? We've got soaring energy costs. We've got disruption to global supply chains, but we're also seeing record high temperatures in other places like the US. Now, what happens if you put tomatoes in very high temperatures? Well, that actually stops them growing as well, uh, due largely to the amount of evaporation of water and the amount of water they need. And in the US, then supplying some of the water has been difficult. So there's basically various other problems sort of causing this sort of basic issue. We've got basic problems with energy in the UK, disruptions of weather. Are there any other things, Paul, that are causing
Well,
this?
yeah. So going along those lines, of course, one of the major things is we went through a drought last year, and quite a lot of Europe went through a drought, and so suddenly there wasn't enough water in the soil over summer to replenish ready for winter, and it hasn't been that wet this winter. And obviously, today is the first of meteorological spring, so we can declare it being spring as opposed to winter. And the answer is it is estimated, not yet, because they're working through the numbers, that this winter that's just gone, has been quite a dry one. Not officially sort of the driest on record, but
But
it's
still dry.
in sort of the top 10. And you go sort of, 'cause you got to remember, records began a long time ago, getting into the top five. So, but in the top 10 years of the driest winters, which then causes problems when you're trying to grow water intensive crops. When there been a drought, there's been less rain to saying over winter, and so suddenly there isn't as much water to go along, so plants aren't getting in that water, and so you're having this waterless crop essentially growing, which is why basically the tomatoes that have been able to grow are actually a lot smaller because they're less juicy, less watery, and so you're left with not very nice or yeah, particularly appetizing tomatoes to eat. And so one of the things is, of course, they get then pushed onto the industry where they don't care about the thing; they just care about tomato. And so suddenly you move from having a half and half ratio between industry and fresh to say three quarters, because of course supermarkets and wholesalers say people aren't going to buy these tomatoes because they're all small and not very juicy and awful. Yeah, let's just sell them all into industry. Yeah, so people like complaining about they're going to have lack of tomato ketchup are actually going to find not quite. They're still happily, because wholesalers are actually selling non the leftover foods, the soup ones places the supermarkets haven't bought, the tomatoes the supermarkets haven't bought, and they're selling onto the things at a not a reduced price, but at a low price because no one wants them. And these, say ketchup companies are just saying, yeah, we'll take them, but we wanted the highest quality ones, and these are low quality ones, so we're only going to pay $1.50
Yeah.
for it.
And then, of course, the farmers don't like that because they're not getting a good return on their investment. We're still looking at the cost of tomatoes over the last year rising by about 60%, the cost. And that's sort of been interesting. But back on that water problem, we had a drought. We haven't really replenished the water. So starting this year, we're not seeing our sort of reservoirs full, but we're seeing them start basically half empty. And if we have a dry summer this year, then this is going to have a big effect on the summer salad crops. Now, when used to grow tomatoes, I don't like them, but I used to grow them for my mum, and I used to try and grow them hydroponically. And that's growing my tomatoes basically without any soil, just using water. And you can see that that's going to be an important factor here, that if you haven't got water, because we do grow quite a lot of salad stuff hydroponically because it's sort of,
Not
well,
easier, but it is easier.
well, it is easier and you don't get so many pests. You don't
Yeah,
get all the soil-borne bits and
yeah,
pieces.
yeah.
And the plants do grow really well that way, but they require effort. And that effort is also energy. And of course, that's what's costing now the arm and a leg trying to do it.
You know what also is costing an arm and a leg to grow these things is in outside a normal growing season. You know, we use a lot of, well, I say in a growing season we use a lot of fertilizer, and basically, unfortunately, the major fertilizer place is in Ukraine. And well, guess what's happening to the fertilizer price? All due to the little war, the conflict that's happening over there is, of course, fertilizer.
Special operation.
Yeah, I know.
You mustn't say war because otherwise Mr. Putin gets really upset.
Yes, I know. Anyway, so fertilizer price has increased.
Yep.
I'm not saying astronomically, but let's just say, unlike oil prices and gas prices, but let's just say they could be rising. They're currently at a 70 year high at the moment. That just says something, and it's expected to go up and keep going up because, of course, no one's making as much fertilizer, and you in winter, you need fertilizer all year round if you're going to grow crops in winter. So therefore, they're having this major problem of not having the fertilizers to grow over the winter. So they said, why should we grow? We've only got one time to buy fertilizer because of how expensive it is. Let's save it all up and use it on the summer crop rather than having spreading it over the year to buy winter. And so suddenly, you can now see that winter growers are now facing the problem of they're not growing winter because it's just too expensive for them to grow winter. So they're now going from a two harvest year to a single harvest year, which of course means that instead of having twice the amount of food stuff, we're only going to get one.
And farmers are going to have to try and go back to the old rotation system whereby they can sort of use natural organic stuff to put back into the soil rather than buying all the expensive fertilizers to try and do this. Yeah, so that's a problem. So, Paul, when I started, I said about the great salad shortage, and I said, yeah, Teresa Coffey said, well, let them eat turnips. So, why can't we eat turnips then?
Well, the honest answer is we can, because the turnip is quite a
Seasonal.
seasonal crop. It's a very not one winter based one, but essentially it is early spring is when they're meant to be coming up, and so technically, I say the market is flooded with turnips. The answer is not flooded because it's just ordinary amount of turnips pouring in. The
And people are desperately eating them.
And the point is that when Teresa Coffey said let them eat turnips, unfortunately, lots of supermarkets found there was a run on turnips because you have some our government ministers saying, well, you can't buy tomatoes. Why not have in your BLT you can't have tomatoes in your BLT, so why don't you have bacon, lettuce, and turnip sandwiches? Yeah, still BLT by the way. Uh,
Yes, yeah, okay.
so so she said, do this. You can Swedes and those sorts of things. And so people went, sure, why not? I can't get my tomatoes. Let's go and buy some Swedes, some turnips, some.
And farmers didn't know this because they needed to know some sort of 6 months, year in advance. So they didn't but they didn't sort of sow any more turnips. So there are only so many turnips around. If there's a run on them, well, that's why there's a shortage of those as well.
So yeah, as I said, it is this the problems. Not as with the supply chain is the answer, but it is this. You know, if you call things out to go and do this locally when there's a shortage, you find actually it causes more shortages because people go, well, I can't buy my tomatoes. I'll buy, something else. In this case, it was turnips. And then suddenly all your turnips, because no one's appreciated that the bad tomato crop will actually, no, the tomato growers didn't inform the turnip growers that they weren't doing so well. And so the turnip people need to sow more turnips. Yeah,
Yeah, and they didn't
and they didn't.
because they didn't know. So we're seeing a large grocery inflation at the moment. It's been 16.7% in the UK in the last 4 weeks up to January the 22nd, when I could get the last amount of data on that. It always takes about a week or so behind. So that's battling here the cost of inflation. It's sort of making it worse and worse and worse. So let's ask a different question then. What are the alternatives to buying salad stuff? And I think the first one would be, well, why not grow your own? And a lot of people do grow their own salad stuff during the summer. And during the summer, they'll manage to harvest quite a lot. But how about growing it in winter? And there are things like lettuce. You can grow that very happily on the windowsill. I've done that before now.
Yeah. However, I do say once again, it's the problem of, there is enough water to go around, but not for agriculture. So it's one of those things where, you know, fertilizer price is expensive. So you don't need to find a new fertilizer source. And all these extra things of growing your own has a major problem, which is
It does cost. Yes,
yeah.
it does cost, but it's still cheaper than buying them. I can go and buy my lettuce seeds and I can grow them on my windowsill. It doesn't cost me any more to basically heat my house, to heat those sort of lettuces to keep them happy because I was heating my house anyway. And one of the nice things about growing your own is that I don't have to cut a whole lettuce. No, what I do is I go and talk to the little lettuce and I say how nice it's going to be to just give up a few leaves. And I can chop a few leaves off the lettuce. I can go and eat those for my salad. And the rest of the plant is still there growing, and in a week or two, it's grown some more leaves, which I can then harvest again and again and again. So I don't have to chop my lettuce off completely, and I can basically keep a supply of lettuce going all year round by basically just sort of chopping off leaves when they're ready and when I want them. So that's one way of doing it.
So that's one way. So the another way, if you don't want to grow your own, is why don't you look at eating seasonal veg? Now, this might seem daft, but as I say, salad is very summer based, and sweet and turnips are very winter based. Uh, you've got other things such as lentils and beans are very much winter based. And sort of, why don't you look at having, say, a baked bean sarnie as your salad for your
I know
salad?
we have baked beans on toast. I haven't heard of a baked bean sarnie, although you do a very good baked bean pizza, Paul,
Well, yes,
except that's in tomato sauce.
yes. Well, there are problems and advantages. All I'm just saying is currently in season is things like lentils, beans, and of course chickpeas from the Americas. Those are all you know easy things to have because not there's a lot of them, but they've been in season and sort of able to be eaten up, and there's no shortage of them because of course they don't they don't use a lot of water because it's one of those things where they're out there.
And I think there's another one, which is a very important one, which is why not forget the supermarket and go and support your local farm shop? Farm shops are ways that basically farmers can sort of basically bring their own produce to market. You look at a farm shop, generally the food that's there being sold is grown on that actual farm. If not, it's grown on a local farm and brought in there. And you're supporting the British farmers, you're paying them what it costs them because they work out how much it costs them. They put generally quite a small markup on that. And although those goods may be more expensive than you can get them in the supermarket, they're certainly nicer because they're homegrown. They are basically much fresher. Some of the farm stuff, I've been in an afternoon, and the farmer said, "Yeah, well, it's pretty fresh." He said, "I've only cut about an hour ago," and so it's really fresh and it's good. It's good food. So support your local farm shop. And there's one basically near you. Don't ask me where, but basically you look around the towns and you go just a bit into the country and you will find a plethora, oh, big word, of farm shops as the farmers are trying to sort of basically make a living.
Yeah, and those are places to do so. One of the major things, of course, is the in relation to those farm shops is basically you need to start talking to your person, your local representative. Whether it's be county or uh MP. I'm trying to work out what the MP versus county, but yeah,
Your local councillor,
your
because
local.
they're the usual ones causing all the problems.
Yeah, and the answer is you need to basically make sure advocate the sort of why wasn't farmers allowed in the horticultural and the agricultural business in this price cap? Now, reasons might have been there've been reasons, but we'll answer that. But it's also why are wholesalers being told I will only buy 36p for a tomato? Surely the wholesalers are the ones who should be setting the price as opposed to the supermarket. So you need
Well, I
to.
think the farmer should actually set the price.
Yeah, I know, but we'll get there at the time. But it is this: if you get the farmers to have the price they were only sell it, and then get other people to buying it at that price, then you could find and actually see that farmers say, it is financially worth it to actually grow these crops, even though it's a great huge
Yeah.
amount of cost.
Basically, I think it comes down to really give a farmer a hug. They are the people that support this country where you get your food from. And if you live in another country, well, your farmers are doing exactly the same thing. You've been listening to the Going Green podcast, looking at the great salads shortage that we're suffering at the moment. Not just us, but worldwide. Next week, we'll be back with another topic on going green. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
A goodbye from me.
Bye bye.
Bye.